He says we're good.
Take this off, Lisa.
I'm gonna shoot it up into the sky. Point it to the sky.
Yeah.
Because I know all this is actually.
Taking pictures.
Better smile.
That's red for his shirt.
So,
Tell us we're gonna have to sing
I think we're ready to begin.
you guys ready? Thank
Okay.
you so much for everybody coming tonight.
Yes, thank you all for coming tonight. Can everybody hear me all right? Okay, very good. I'm Nancy Reese Barrett. I'm a retired professional facilitator, so go easy on me. A little rusty, but want to welcome everyone tonight, give you an idea of how we're going to move through the evening. You've all been given, if you wanted it, a card. Remember, it's one question per card. You can submit 5 if you want to, but please leave it at one question per card. That makes it easier for us to move through the agenda. So with that, we will have public comments at the end of the question and answer portion, and we will have time limits on that, and an actual person with a watch is going to watch that rather than one who uses it for a phone. So can't keep time. So with that, I'll hand it back to Lauren.
I would like to first off apologize for my attire. I was planning on sitting in the crowd and just being a listener tonight, and was asked by the mayor to sit up here. So I would normally not be. I'm sorry, folks. I apologize.
We're all amongst friends.
Yes.
Okay, I want to introduce our panel really quick. So we have Captain Patrick Conley here. He is our amazing Salvation Army. Everything you need to know, he has the knowledge. And Salvation Army is our only shelter here in Shawnee. So this is the man who wields a great amount of influence with our homeless friends and neighbors. This man has been a lifesaver to me during the count and just overall information when I was starting this job. I do not know how I would have had an introduction without this guy. Moving on, we have Beth here. Beth is everything and anything, Porch House, Emmanuel Episcopal Services, everything. I call her all the time. Call her the other day and got a Spanish-speaking person, so that way I could have some translation going on. And who would have known that she would have been the person to have that answer, but she came through within like 20 minutes. And then we have our Mr. Mayor here. Mr. Mayor Ed Bolt is the one, the myth, man, legend. Needs no introduction. My name is Lauren Craig. I am your homeless services coordinator for the city of Shawnee and an overall goofball. And then we have Commissioner Travis Flood here and his best Sunday best. Yeah.
It's hot on Sundays.
I'd like to quickly introduce some of our count data. And I want to say, if you have an agenda here, our little logo here will tell you what the name of our place is, and this is my email address if you have any questions or would like additional information about our homeless census that was done the first week of May. Our homeless census was a little bit different than the point-in-time count that typically happens in January. We decided that this program has to be driven by real-time, accurate data, and the best way that we could get a real plunge into it, instead of having one service point here reporting, one service point here, was to just do it for an entire week. We combed the ends of the earth here in Shawnee. We went through any kind of camp that you can possibly find. We went all the way through the creek beds and railroads. We went into abandoned buildings. We had some 80s movie adventure style experiences. And it was an overall overwhelming and a joyful experience, actually, to see the amount of community support for this issue. As you can see by looking around you here today, there is a tremendous amount of passion here in Shawnee to end homelessness for our homeless neighbors. Like I said, this happened during May 4th through 7th. That's quite uncommon for most places, but we had this wonderful 21 question survey that takes some time to do, so we needed to give our volunteers some adequate time to have one-on-one bonding experience with our homeless neighbors and friends. We ended up with a total of 86 completed surveys, which is miraculous seeing how the last point in time count only captured 94 persons total. That can tell you quite a bit of information just in that alone. But by working with nonprofits and schools, emergency shelters, transitional shelters, sober living facilities, we were able to capture way more data than that. We have 51 persons who are living in some type of sheltered environment, but this could mean that during the day they do not have anywhere to go. This shelter just means that they had a place to sleep at night. And then we had an additional 23 persons who refused and declined to do the survey. We had no problems there, but we took a good description of each person that declined, so that way we could cross-reference that to our other documents and make sure we weren't counting people twice. Additionally, we captured some age and demographic information, your very stereotypical race and ethnicity questions. What really surprised me was the amount of youth persons that were experiencing homelessness in our community. We had 11 persons aged 0 to 24 complete the survey, which is quite an alarming number that you have such youngins out there living unsheltered. And then in addition to that, we had 55 plus persons that we identified as chronically homeless. That means that they have been homeless for a mixed amount of time, or they've been homeless continuously for more than a year. That's quite an incredible amount of persons here in our community. One of our better friends who helped us get a lot of information about where we could actually find people during the day, his name is Tommy, and he was a great friend of ours. He is one of our homeless neighbors and friends, and he wanted me to directly quote him tonight, and he says, "I am 57 years old. I've lived in Shawnee my whole life, and I've been homeless almost all that time too. I don't have anything here, but I don't know anywhere else." That brings me to what I really want to cover. A lot of people, when I first took this job and I was taking a lot of interviews, were under the assumption that most homeless persons that are living in Shawnee came here from a different community. But it was very clear to us that we had 71% of persons surveyed said that they had lived in Shawnee or in nearby communities before they became homeless. And that's quite a significant number. The remaining persons said that they had been in surrounding states and had been traveling by foot or by bus tickets whenever they could scrounge up the money to get there. Most of those people do say that they're trying to eventually travel to another state. I strongly, strongly believe that we can address homelessness if we focus on housing and connective services. We can never identify the reason why somebody becomes homeless until we can get that person stable and in an environment that supports stability long term. So I want to thank each and every one of you for coming here tonight. I would like us to, yes, go through questions. Let me answer those. Let our panel answer those. But also bring us your ideas. Things that you have seen successful on the news, things that you've seen in other communities, things that you've read about, things that you just had a random idea that this might actually work. Because without you and without your support, I don't know that this will succeed. But with this room full of people, I know that it will. So thank you again for being here. I'm going to get a little misty. I was actually expecting us to be sitting here with like 3 friends. So again, thank you so much. I'm going to hand this back over to Nancy.
Okay. I think we are at the point, at this point to take up the cards. Would you like me to gather them?
That'd be good.
All right. If you have a card with a question written on it, pass it down to the end. No questions? No questions? Question? Question, I'm sorry.
There you go.
Others? Should I ask them?
Yep.
Do you have, are these for specific people, or do you want to just address it to the panel?
We do the
Just do it with the panel?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
First question is, how about a resource center instead of a day shelter? I'm going to turn that over to Patrick. Patrick, do you have any words of wisdom?
So the question was, how about a resource center instead of a day shelter? Okay. Sure, you can call it whatever you want. Yeah. The problem is we don't have a day shelter currently. So I'm not really sure how to answer that question. But yeah, a resource center would be great. Particularly a place where they are welcome to utilize computers and access information, to have a place to meet with individuals who are providing services from other disciplines. You know, if a veteran services individual is in town and wants to meet with them about housing, they'd have a place to do that instead of having to utilize an agency. So I think a resource center or a day center, whatever you want to call, whatever the community wants to call it, would probably be a very beneficial, very, very beneficial addition to services.
Absolutely.
Can you tell them?
That's actually my question.
Sure. Come up, if you would. Come up
Come
here
up
if
to
you
the
would,
mic,
please.
please.
That way make sure everybody hears you. And thank you for the question.
Yes, so I work at the Oklahoma City MEPS where we put kids in the military, and downstairs or downtown they recently opened up like a resource center
Right.
where they can come and do their laundry,
Right.
you know, because that's an issue. We live downtown and we find clothes, I guess they get vouchers sometimes maybe to go over to the Salvation Army to get clothes, and then we'll just find them. I mean, I've gotten really nice towels out of our alley, clothing, purses, things like that, but there's nowhere for like them to do their laundry. And forgive me, I'm not sure exactly what resources y'all provide there, but you have a really big building. You know, I do know that.
Sure.
I know that you feed them. Maybe if, you know, you had a couple of 2 or 3 or 4 washer and dryers where they're able to do their laundry, if they can shower there, you know, so they can get ready before they go on an interview. I know some people that have expired photo IDs, they've lost their social security card, you know, so they don't have all this to be able to go out and apply to get a job, you know, and I would volunteer to help down there, you know. I don't get off until 4, but, you
Well, the good
know.
news is we don't open at our facility until 4 for homeless services. However, the problem for us at the Salvation Army to open a facility like that is that we don't have the space to accommodate that addition or expansion of the program in our current facility.
Okay, I've never toured your
Yeah,
facility,
well,
so I'm not aware of what's
I will
there.
give you my business card.
Okay.
And in fact, anyone is welcome. We could even schedule a date at a time for everyone to come down and just look and see what it looks like, what
Yeah.
the process is.
I mean, I know you provide food at 6 o'clock every evening.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think that's great, but I mean, to me, I mean, I'm not comparing humans to cats, but we feed cats, and the more we feed, the more that come. And then, you know, I mean, so
Sure.
it's just, I think if we had like I said, a resource center where they could do their laundry, shower, get ready for an interview, possibly people volunteering to give them rides or whatever, you know. We've helped this one young lady that works at Brahms, and I think she's been in y'all's facility for almost a year. I'm not gonna name her by name, but, you know, we've helped her and give her rides and stuff. I think she's finally living on her own. But, I think, you know, other than just, I don't know what your day shelter is that you're wanting to provide. Is it
Well,
just
that
gonna be
hasn't-
go in and get some water?
Ma'am, I'm
have a
sorry, that's your
TV?
time. We'll open this back up again.
Okay.
So let's regroup. So
Okay.
let's clarify what's going to happen. I love this. This is exactly what we're here to do tonight. But let's restructure this. So if you have a very specific question that will have a very specific answer, let's get back to the cards. Let's pass those out again possibly. Let's make this Q&A as efficient as possible. That way friends who have a specific question can get that question answered and go back to their families this evening. Those that want to hang out and chat tonight, let's do that too, okay? Nobody's being told that they can't speak tonight. We have a secondary question, and this is a question regarding the poverty budget. I think that this is below all. I'm sorry, I'm going to ask whoever made this question to also come up to the podium. Yeah,
Mr.
thank
Young.
you, sir.
How are you, sir?
Rick Young, 617 South Park. I'm a longtime Shawnee resident. That was my question about how much money we spend on poverty in Shawnee, America. with all the different 40 different 501c3s. I know we do a real good job of feeding and clothing. The housing portion that we do is lacking, and we can facilitate that a little bit. But I think we have enough revenue in the city to take care of that, and we have plenty of other places around the country that we can pull from to not to reinvent the wheel. So that was my question as to how much money is actually being expended for the poverty situation in Shawnee.
Yeah. I do not have a specific answer. I would have to comb through probably a year's worth of legal documents to figure out that number, but I know that it's millions of dollars. I can tell you that right now. We are an entitlement community, which means that we have a significant amount of people who live below or at the poverty line and require assistance just to make day-to-day needs.
Can we measure that dollar expenditure for success as we might want to count success?
That's a really great question. So what our continuum of care hopes to do moving forward, in fact, on July 6th, we have our very first meeting, is to get every nonprofit into the room and say, okay, let's evaluate. And we'll have performance evaluations at every meeting. Is what you are doing working? Is what you hope to do going to work? Let's check and balance and make sure that what is being put out there is actually beneficial to persons requesting services. So that's completely fair question, and one that we've been asking too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Additional questions?
So there's,
Yep.
I know that we want to talk about plans for the future shelter. It's already.
Oh, good. Good.
Good at Christmas. How will the low-income homes that Avitas is planning to play into the housing homeless?
Where have been-
Don't believe this is.
I believe I know where this question is coming from, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the sustainability project that's happening with a few of our community nonprofits is what's being referenced here. I do know specific numbers on the housing authority. That would probably be the better question. Anything that the nonprofits are doing in town that's regarding homeless housing would probably all go to the housing authority, which unfortunately they're at capacity and have a wait list of quite a few months. Whatever we do moving forward will have to be a partnership with private landlords and realty groups and things in that nature, as well as the build of new facilities that are geared specifically towards homeless persons, which is not unusual for municipalities.
Yeah, there's not any like specific plans that I'm aware of that, Avitas is working on. There is a sustainability project for community renewal, but I mean, I think they're looking at like maybe one test house in the next year, hopefully. That hasn't even reached that point yet. And that would be, I would say, affordable housing.
Yes, and it's in the housing that we are looking at is not low income.
No.
It is affordable. It's intended to be not necessarily a poverty initiative, but a initiative to help families that are paying more in rent than they should be, and try to intentionally help them become homeowners. And it's working through working with existing homes and being intentional about trying to work with builders to build homes that are in the, we have a significant number of homes that are in kind of our lower range, and then we have some in the higher range. But the middle area, your $100 to $150 $1,000 homes. There's not a lot of those. There's even fewer of the 75 to 100s, and so we're trying to be intentional about seeing what that might look like as far as helping bring more of that to this part of the world without saturating the market and creating a product that isn't worth anything. And so, and it is not intended to be low income. It's intended to be a home that anybody would be proud to live in, and not isolated in one area. To be intended to be put in as many pockets of Shawnee as we can, because we know that when you intentionally build silos in the city, then you know that's where some of the things that sometimes we get caught up in areas where we put a large number of folks without the social capital to create a better life for themselves. And so we hope that through dispersing these houses throughout Shawnee, that we can put them in neighborhoods and areas where they can have as many relationships and as many opportunities to thrive and succeed as they can.
Hopefully.
All right, the next question is, there is a new shelter unlike any other that opened in Oklahoma City. The visitors may leave their items, they are given help to find a job, and they have a nice place to sleep. What is the possibility of Shawnee opening one of those?
Well, I mean, anything is possible. I mean, it takes money. I mean, that's the simple answer. I have not personally had the opportunity to go see that shelter in Oklahoma City. I know it's only been open, I think, about a week. Obviously, to do something like that, you have to have the conversation of, you know, where does the money come from? You also have to have some very hard discussions on where is that going to be located, and those conversations haven't happened yet. So I think that shelter definitely has some possibilities. I mean, I think it has great goals. I would love to go see it, but I mean, we're not near to the point yet here in Shawnee where that's even being discussed. So we're still a ways off for that. But I mean, obviously, we're going to have to come up with some kind of a solution. But there's still a lot of difficult conversations that we're going to have to do that. I don't know what you want to add to that.
I think I would just add that nothing is out of the question, and that is what we call a low barrier to no barrier shelter, and that is a necessity here in Shawnee, because we've got some folks that just will not be able to navigate some of the systems that are in place at most traditional shelters. And keep that in mind, that most of those traditional shelters have those barriers in place to keep staff safe. So this is also something that you have to consider, that when you're looking at a budget for a facility like this, it's all encompassing of services, hygiene needs, food needs, clothing needs, et cetera, pet, medical. You're looking at a substantial cost. Right now, we're in the grant research process, looking for some help there if anybody's in the room. But we are like in love with this idea of this possibility for our community. But Ed brings up a very fair point. Where is it going to go? And this is a conversation our community has had before, and we dropped the torch, but now it's time to pick it up again. And instead of dropping it this time, we're going to keep it running until we get the answer. Okay.
Would you like to read this question, because it's for you?
Get everybody involved here.
It says, if the Salvation Army building isn't being opened until 4 in the afternoon, what is it being utilized for during the day? Well, in regards to the shelter facility, it isn't used during the day, and in order for it to be used, according to Salvation Army policy, I'd have to staff it. Well, staffing costs money, which I don't have. I also don't have the staff to run what I have. So that's the biggest barrier for me at the Salvation Army from operating and utilizing the building during the day, because the staff that I do have on site have jobs that are specific during those business hours. Can I answer that question?
Yeah, and I think what the largest portion of the building is the Boys and Girls Club
Yes.
too, which makes it look like the building is monstrous,
Enormous.
but it's really not that big.
Right. No, the Boys and Girls Club is half the building.
Yeah.
So when you look at it, there's a gymnasium and classrooms that take up half the building, which is the Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah.
There is a sanctuary in the building, and there's some office space, and then it's dorms and a dining room.
Yeah, I think people would be surprised how small it is when they actually
Yes.
go
Yeah.
inside. If you would kind of follow up in that question though, talk about the the cooling and the heating policies that you
Yeah.
have? Because I think that's really important, because we keep hearing that we don't have those here in Shawnee,
Sure.
but we really do, and people just aren't aware.
Sure, sure. So, any day during the summer when the actual temperature rises above 100 degrees, we open our facility during the day so that individuals can pop in and cool off, get a drink of water, and are not continuously exposed to the elements. The alternate is true in the wintertime, when the real feel in the winter dips below 32. For as long as it is below freezing, our facility is open to provide a place that is inside out of the elements. And so that's as far as cold weather or inclement weather sheltering goes, those are our policies at the Salvation Army. And as you all will recall, from February, we had a good bit of snow.
Yep.
I moved here from Mississippi. We don't see that very often. We chew our air there because it's so thick with humidity. We don't get to see the water laying on the ground in white, fluffy piles. And so it was a new experience for us. But we were open for a total of 14 days, 2 weeks straight, from before the storm happened until after the snow had melted, open 24 hours a day. At the height of it all, we had 30 people who were seeking shelter in our facility during that time.
But at that time, everybody was welcome.
Yes, yeah, there was no barrier at that point. When we're talking about inclement weather, there's no barrier. And when it comes to barriers, the only barrier the Salvation Army has is ID. We have to be able to identify the person. Now, it doesn't have to be a picture ID. That could be a clear warrants check from the police department right here.
Right.
So they identify themselves to the police can identify who they are. They receive a piece of paper that says that their name and their last known residence, and then they can be admitted to our facility. Previously, 2 years ago, in fact, we used to breathalyze before people entered, and we no longer do that. Your conduct and behavior in our facility is what dictates whether you get to stay or not whether you're under the influence of a substance. So our barrier, our shelter was substance abuse is a pretty high barrier when it comes to admission to a shelter. And so by removing that and then requiring an ID, which is easily accessible, not just picture ID, but an alternate form through a wants and warrants check, does make us a lower barrier shelter.
Thank you.
All right. The next question, there are multiple abandoned buildings in Shawnee. Why can't we use one of them to provide showers and et cetera? And so at the Porch House at Emmanuel, we have one shower. We also have a washer and dryer that we let people use if they ask. And we have several people who, like, they know there's a shower and they regularly shower. But you have to have a volunteer there. So, I mean, we're in the office. There's 3 people on staff from 9 to 1. And then we have volunteers who come to the Porch House from 11 to 12. And then when we need, when the shower request picks up, we have more volunteers who will come from 12 to 1 and let people take a shower.
Right. Another point I want to make in answering that question is that, yes, we have a number of abandoned buildings, more than we would like to have, but they have owners. I mean, we can't just take those properties. I mean, there's a very long, arduous process that we have to go through. I will tell you, for those that are concerned about, dilapidated structures and so forth, the budget that we just approved, that Commissioner Flood and I just voted on to approve here the other day, the demolition budget in that is considerably higher than it used to be. 2 years ago, that was $50,000. And, that sounds like a lot of money if we're talking about, let's go to Walmart or something. But I mean, $50,000 when it comes to knocking down buildings and hauling that off and some, doing it in a safe manner because you have possibly asbestos and that kind of thing, that doesn't get you very far. This year's budget that we approved, I believe, was $275,000.
yes.
$275,000. So it's over 5 times what it was just 2 years ago. So, I mean, we are taking this seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be a code enforcement thing. And, you know, when that happens, that's a painful thing on both sides, because we're going to have somebody that's going to be very upset because we want to knock down their building. But we're also going to have neighbors that are rightfully upset that, you know, they've got a dilapidated building in their neighborhood and things have been let go like they are. So, I mean, it's always going to be an ugly ordeal any way we slice it.
And then what happens often is there's usually a tax lien from the county on it,
Absolutely.
and then there's a $6,000 to $7,000 lien on it from the demolition, and then you have a lot that's nobody wants to purchase because it's way more expensive than what it's worth to a lot of people.
But it's a situation that we recognize as a commission, and we're committed to try to think of some creative ways to make that situation better. But as far as just being able to go in and take someone's abandoned building and put showers and washers and stuff in it, I mean, I wish it was that easy. I really do. Luckily, we do have at least one location.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that when folks stay with you, they have
Yep,
access to.
laundry and
Right.
shower facilities, yes.
So we're a long ways from where we need to be on that, but we recognize the need, and together we'll all work on this. So very good question, and I appreciate it.
All right. This is a very good question, too. What gaps in community services were highlighted by the survey?
That's for me, very specifically. We realize that there is not enough mental health providers that are uniquely trained on the issue of homelessness, and that is a momentous problem for our community. Typically, in communities that have an outreach team, they have one person on each team of 3. You have somebody who is trained and experienced in veteran services, a general volunteer, and somebody who is trained and certified in trauma response. And there's a list of like 4 or 5 certifications that a mental health provider will have when they go out in the field to do outreach. There is a grant that we can apply for next fiscal year, and I'm very excited about. That's coming around in September. We do plan on applying for that. Fingers crossed. That was the major one that we identified. Obviously, the hygiene issue was a huge one. Transportation was the third, and additionally, a place to place trash. That was something that was requested. I think it was the 4th highest requested item. Our last question on this questionnaire said, "What is your biggest and most emergent need?" And you'd be surprised how many people just said trash bags. So. I think those are the gaps there. And then
Obviously, a gap that we have is housing.
Obviously.
I mean, that's, the gentleman that came in from Oklahoma City and talked with us, I just love what he had to say. He said, if you ask a 5-year-old, if you say, we have a homeless problem, what do we need? Homes. I mean, just such a simple answer, But so that's something that as a community, we have to, solve that, and we can't do that overnight. So, most of the folks that you've talked with, if they had the opportunity to be housed, they would be.
Yes. I only had 4 that said that they would like to sleep outside every night for the rest of their lives. I had one guy said, I just had my 55th birthday, and I realized it 4 months after it happened, and I am really tired of feeling cold all the time, and I would like to be in a house. I've had enough of outside. If I get a house tomorrow, I will probably never see my front lawn.
Yeah, I would think that would get tougher and tougher as you get older. The ground gets harder, and it gets colder and gets hotter, but we can't snap our fingers and make that happen. So. That was a good question. That was it. Surely we got more
Other
questions. Oh,
questions?
Lisa's got one there for us. Oh, we got more. Good. That's what we want.
Yes. Here comes the blood.
Oh, there we go. Here's some more.
No pun intended.
Ah.
Okay. My
Oh,
gosh.
well, we got
My
lunch.
good
That's
golly.
good.
Okay.
Thank you guys very much.
Is there any potential for a transitional tiny home community in Shawnee. Similar communities exist in Norman and OKC. There's one in Norman called Food and Shelter that Mayor Bolt toured.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We have tossed around this idea quite a bit. This is actually something that's pretty high on our list. It's the reason why tiny homes are great is because the persons who have lived in homeless conditions for a long period of time, once they are housed, have a tendency to have sensory deprivation issues. In a smaller environment, they feel more control, more safe. They feel as though they actually can control and have an impact on their environment in every waking second, and it actually is proven to keep people from returning to homelessness. I'm going to pass this back over to Ed so he can tell you.
Well, you know,
more.
I've toured two of these type facilities. One was Food and Shelter down in Norman, and I think they've got about 32 homes. The way those were paid for is they got businesses in town to basically write the check for them. They were small. I want to say 200 to about 600 square feet. So I think the biggest one was like 600 square feet, had 2 bedrooms. So it was kind of designed for a family, and they had smaller ones that were just maybe 200-300 square feet and designed more for maybe one or two people. They were very nice. I mean, very, very nicely built and looked very appealing. And they were laid out, you know, kind of in a neighborhood fashion where rather than a street running through there, it was a sidewalk. But all the porches faced in so that, you know, people could sit out on the porch and you know, get to know each other and you know, and have neighbors, you know, which is important. And, you know, it's very, very nicely done. I was very, very impressed with that. But I mean, they had enough sponsors, businesses in town that said, hey, we'll sponsor one of those. And I think, and I could be wrong, but ballpark, I'm gonna be in the ballpark. I mean, they were probably $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to build, okay? So you're asking a business to write basically that check. The other one that I've toured, and Commissioner Flood's been with me, I believe, we went up to Pivot in Oklahoma City, which is near Northeast 50th and Santa Fe. In fact, the old, their headquarters building up there on that property was the offices for the old Streets department stores. I don't know, some of you won't be old enough to remember Streets, but that's where that was. And I think their goal is to have 80-something homes built that are roughly about 200 square feet. Very, very nice. Again, it was lots of donations. Those are targeted specifically for younger folks that are at that age where they're falling out of the system. So they're not, you know, like, you know, they're basically college age. The homes are really nice. I mean, compared to the dorm I lived in at OU 50 years ago, let me tell you, I'd go jump in one of those in a heartbeat. I mean, they were very, very nicely done. And, you know, and the thing I asked both of those places is, what do your neighbors think? And, you know, and there were some concerns initially, especially with the one in Norman, but I think they've gotten past that, and they see how that operation is being run. Pivot, I know there's an apartment complex immediately to their north, and I asked them, you know, how the relationship was with the neighbors, and they said really good, because they knew, you know, what they're doing is they're taking these kids that are at very high risk and getting them housed. And then in both of these places, these people have to go through all kinds of training. I mean, things that a lot of us, you know, we got trained at home by our parents, but these folks didn't. I mean, that wasn't their upbringing. So I know that when I was at Pivot, they told me about one young man that he went to the store and he bought some chicken, and he just threw it up on his countertop. And about a week later, he decided, I'm gonna cook that chicken. Yeah, so you already know what happened to him. He got sick, so he got a bad case of food poisoning. But, you know, he had just not been taught that you got to refrigerate your chicken. Well, he learned that the hard way, the way we'd rather not learn it. But I mean, they there they have to pay rent. So they start out at $0, and then it kind of ratchets up, and I think it tops out at about $200. And in both of these places, it's not a permanent solution. They are only allowed to stay there so long. They have to have a job, they have to do this, they have to do that. They have all these commitments that they have to make and all this training that they have to go through. And then they in fact, I know at Pivot they call it graduating out of there. And then, they get their own apartment, and they've been very successful. It's a very impressive place, and I think done well. If a person of that age gets in trouble, a lot of times that's where the police bring them. And a lot of that paperwork that the police used to have to handle, now the folks at Pivot do for them. So the cops love it because it clears a lot of their paperwork, and they've got someone that, can do that for them. So, they work very, very closely with the police, which, we are too. In fact, we had hoped to have, and Vivian had something come up at the last minute, but we are working very, very closely with our police department here in town. If you put all the groups that Lauren's been working with, you wouldn't near have room. There's probably 30 different organizations that she's working with and coordinating efforts with. So I've seen a couple of these places. Again, it's money and where do we put it?
Yep.
And those are two really difficult conversations that we as a community are going to have. We know we don't like the current situation, right? I think everybody in here agreed status quo isn't going to work. So that means we have got to come together and figure out a better way. And that's why we've started participating in this project, the Bill for Zero, and specifically Quality by Name list that Lauren is working for us. So very good question. And I appreciate it.
If you would like
sir.
to see an amazing example of a shelter community, there's an organization called Mobile Loaves and Fishes. It's MLF.org, and they have a feeding ministry, but they also have what they call their Community First Village, and it's a pretty significant attempt to feed, house, and do community works and micro enterprises and opportunities for the residents to earn a dignified income. And it's phenomenal, but it is a 51-acre facility outside of Austin that and so when we talk about the amount of capital that it would take to operate something like that, or the sheer space to operate something like that, it is amazing. And I know there might be an opportunity to do something on a smaller scale, but it's if we're going to be dreaming big dreams and praying big prayers for something like this, take a tour through that website and look at what they do, and I promise you will be impressed.
Yeah, obviously we want it to be at the scale of Austin, Texas, but
Yeah.
we do have about 500 folks that have a problem.
The next question was, were the youths that were identified majority recently homeless or chronically homeless? And I would say that it was a fair mix. There were a lot of persons who aged out of the foster care system that we spoke with, and there were I would say 8 of mine probably aged out of the foster care system. And then the other half of youths is considered 0 to 24 by HUD standards. The remaining were persons who probably, much like Ed was talking about, maybe had an unfortunate childhood situation where they just weren't given the tools to succeed or the tools to build a future path outside of what they knew as a child. Now, we did have a great number of persons who were in their 30s and late 20s who had become homeless within the year due to COVID, and those persons, I think I identified 34 specifically, who said that they lost income due to COVID, right, and then just couldn't navigate the unemployment system and just fell through the cracks, and they are eligible for COVID relief. I sat on a Zoom call for about 2 hours this morning talking about what funds that we can get available to our community this summer to make sure that those people re-enter in housing. What you want to avoid is people who are homeless for over a year. Once you pass that point, it's been proven statistically over and over and over again that they are less likely to come back to a housed situation without serious intervention. These youngins, they are young people. They deserve a chance. They deserve a second chance. I really believe in them. I believe that we can get these people back on their feet. COVID really took the wind out of all of our sails. I think we can all relate that it was a disaster all around.
Would you share that information again tonight that you shared at our last commission meeting about the kids that are homeless for 1 year and their odds of graduating?
Yeah.
It's 13%.
Yeah, I have, so on the website, you can go and look at quite a bit of our data points. It's homeshawneeok.org. We're going to compile some of the resources that we worked with on HUD. But yes, children who experience homelessness secondhand, so their parents are homeless, therefore they are homeless, they're living in a car, an RV, in any kind of doubled up situation. Every year that they experience homelessness, they are 13%, I won't quote it directly, I had it written down, but they are less likely to graduate high school. And in addition to that, they are more likely to have truancy charges for no fault of their own, which can cause separation of families. It can cause them to move school districts to try to avoid trouble. It causes a railroad of problems down throughout their lives. And when we have looked at this for a long time, and we know that kids who move school districts and even move just elementary schools more than 3 times in their life are less likely to graduate high school, and that's elementary school. And these homeless persons with children, they are put into a very unfortunate situation with their children. Homelessness is not illegal. It is not a crime. We are not taking these families apart. We're not pulling them apart. We want to give them a hand up, and we want to give these children a chance. The school system is required by federal law to keep track of kids that they identify as homeless, and at every enrollment, you might have done this as well if you have children in the school system. It's called the McKinney-Vento Act form, so you'll go through and select what type of housing environment you live in. There's A, and then there's B, and if you're identified anywhere within the B category, that's what I mentioned earlier, doubled up on a friend's couch, living in an RV, sleeping in your car, living outside, living on a campground. If you are identified anywhere in that B category, that's where we want to step in and make sure that we can get you housed in adequate housing that's safe and fair and gives your child a chance to stay within their school system. So I hope that answers that question.
Anything to add?
I would just say that the biggest gap I see working from a service provider's perspective is the lack of transitional housing.
Yep.
I can provide them shelter for a short period of time, but what you also realize is those who are chronically homeless, there are some models out there that are housing first models, get them in a house and then we'll worry about everything else later. The trouble with that oftentimes is that they haven't lived in a house in so long, they don't know what it means to be a good tenant. And so that creates trouble for them, even if they get into the housing authority.
Right.
And they get in a fight with their neighbor,
Yep.
and they get evicted. 3 years before they can come back to the housing authority.
Yeah.
Okay? So there's a homelessness situation right there. The other issue that I think the city and the community needs to look at is prioritizing public housing. Currently, you apply for public housing and your name goes on the list. There's no consideration given to whether you're experiencing homelessness or not. When your name gets on the list, that's where you wait on the list until something becomes available. So I think that the city and public housing could prioritize housing to address those who are experiencing homelessness first before moving on to those who are housed that aren't on the street. That's just my 2 cents.
There you go.
That's great.
We've heard that from more than one place. So,
That is
And
true.
I'll say it again.
yeah, there you go.
Our next question is, how many total homeless do we have in Shawnee? Putting in that school data, that 282 children that were identified by the McKinney-Vento Act. In addition to those that we identified during the count, we have a total of 451 persons. We think that number is about 5% higher. If you had an additional 5% to factor in the families that are doubled up, that they probably have a parent or another sibling in addition to that 282 kids. So we know that there's at least one other family member there in most circumstances.
So,
that-
in round numbers, about 500 folks in town. And it's definitely not confined to downtown. It's very visible in downtown, but it is not It is not isolated to downtown at all. It goes every part of town, every part of town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is 100% true. Our next question is there a place or site where we can find a list of resources and programs? Yeah, yes, and exactly what these programs do and where they're. So on the 6th, that is what we're doing. We're going to make a like Shawnee yearbook kind of nonprofit providers and resources, what they specifically do, what clients need to bring when they enter in that door, and how they can navigate getting into an appointment. That way, you have a quick reference guide at every center that might be connecting people to services. That could be your senior center, your public library. This could be any facility that meets and interacts with the public. Could even be here, where we have a quick rapid response when you just pick up the phone and work with people. In addition to that, I believe that there's talk about a software that most of the nonprofits will have that pings. We've identified this person needs this additional services that aren't provided here. Once we get that yearbook in order, and it will be on the website too, that way you and the public can have access to it at all times. So we even had this kid messaged me last night saying that he wants to make an app. I have no idea how that would work, but that would be really cool. Do you guys have any other, like, porch house or anything like that, references?
I mean, I know like what you were talking about when people get into a house and they've been on this waiting list, and one of the rules is they are the only person that's allowed in the house. And I know multiple times that has been what has caused someone to be removed from that housing that they waited for. And the reason is because there's people that took care of them while they were on the streets, and so they want to give that person a place to sleep as well. And and they don't know how to be good tenants and good
Or
neighbors.
they have untreated mental health issues that perhaps causes them to scream out or be loud because of night terrors. Well, you can only irritate your neighbor so long before they, get the landlord involved, who then wants to make sure that everything is smooth because he wants his checks coming in, and moves them out, evicts them. It's the issue is homelessness is not just people without a home. Homelessness is much more than just not having a home. And so getting people housed is a priority, yes, but we also need to have a community safety net that can come around them and provide supportive services so that they don't lose the house that they worked so hard to get. And that's something that I hope will be accomplished through the coordinated case management that the city is looking to engage in. I'm excited as a service provider because currently I'm limited with what I can share with any agency. Unless I have the express written consent of a client of mine, I cannot speak to anybody about their situation or their circumstance. And so what this is going to do is it's going to allow me the opportunity to speak directly with other service agencies, service providers, to help meet needs that are not being met at my facility. At the Salvation Army, we protect personal identifying information as though it was medical information. So we can't share anything. And so participating in this type of project initiative with the city is going to be extremely helpful to those that we serve in linking them directly with other agencies, as opposed to writing a letter and giving them a referral somewhere. Without their written consent, I can't speak to anyone.
Right.
And so getting their written consent to release information to the city will allow me to speak to this group because it's a group that belongs to the city, which will make it much easier for me as a service provider.
That's a really great point to bring up.
The next question is, why is the water shut off in our local parks? I know of only one park that has water available, and it's out by the airport. I don't know why there is. I know that sometimes there are issues with our park water and restrooms because of vandalism. I know that there have been a number of times whenever our restrooms have been closed for an extended period of time because of people choosing to not use them properly and to tear them up and do not good things. And then I also know that I have driven past our local parks and seen the water running full bore, flooding the street, and jumped out of my truck real fast and went and shut that off. So I don't know. That is a question that we can ask and see if there is a way to maybe intentionally put a timed or one-use type of water faucet in those areas where you push it, and if you were to walk away and leave it running, that it wouldn't just be, flooding the area. But that's a very good question. Thank you for asking that, Robert. Yeah.
We'll talk with staff about
Yeah.
that.
This following question says, if we were going to do a subdivision for people to transition out of homelessness, would they have access to anything that they would need, like medical, food, etc., and how would transportation play a factor in this? This is called Connective Supportive Services. It's something that HUD is really familiar with, and there are grants specifically dedicated to make sure that you're bringing the services to a person in transitional housing rather than asking them to go navigate how to get to that person. I have quite a few persons that if I asked them to go walk 3 blocks down the street, halfway there they would forget why they were going there, or they would forget that they had a piece of paper in their hand,
Yeah.
or they would get lost and go right back to where they were right beforehand. Would you say that's true? So bringing the services to them really is a courtesy not only to the homeless, but also to the people that are putting in that time and effort to slot out appointments and schedules and balancing all that factors, so that way they can actually see the clients and guarantee that the service is actually being rendered. I would like to direct a little bit of follow-up to you, Beth. When you're at the Porch House, do you often get questions about how somebody can get additional assistance?
Sometimes we, and so, if somebody says, can I come in and will you help me get on the internet? If we are there and can, yes, we will do that. We get a lot of people needing identification. That is a big question, probably every other day, at least. Somebody needs help getting an ID, because you can't do anything without that. Medication and mental health, that kind of stuff is questioned that we get all the time too. So.
I'm going to make a call for last questions to come up to here, and then we're going to open it up to after our last few, and then we're going to open up to public comments. So just bear with us. We're almost down, I think.
I will say that the easiest ID to get is an Oklahoma ID, but if an individual was not born in the state of Oklahoma, if they've recently had an ID and then they're getting a replacement ID, that's the easiest ID to get. But most of the individuals we encounter that don't have ID don't have a birth certificate, or they were not necessarily born in the state of Oklahoma, or they don't know the information to get the birth certificate, or they don't have identification to prove that they even are entitled to the birth certificate, which is the problem that many of them face, is that they don't have the identification to prove that they're entitled to even receive a copy of a birth certificate to then get an ID.
And getting caught in a loop of, you had a driver's license, or you have a driver's license, you lost your residence, and ended up on the streets, and then so your ID is lost or stolen, then, and if you don't have a birth certificate, because you're not carrying that around in your bag. So to get a birth certificate, you have to have a valid ID that shows your current address. And to get your ID replaced, you have to have a birth certificate. That is a loop that you run into.
And the only opportunity there is if you have a bank card, where you have an established bank account and you can pay for the birth certificate online, because they can identify you through your bank account. Unfortunately, most folks who are experiencing homelessness who've lost their ID don't have a bank card either, and don't have an active bank account. So they have no way of identifying themselves in order to even purchase ID if they have the money.
I have a question that came up that's actually a follow-up from what we were just discussing, and it says, is the City of Shawnee going to collaborate with a list of currently shelters and kind of streamline a process where we can work on, I'm paraphrasing here, And is it possible for in the near future to have a homeless initiative or a sobriety holding place? I think the question really is like, how collaborative are we going to be, and can we make sure that there are like uniform procedures in place to make sure that people aren't slipping through the cracks between facilities? I'm going to first address some things in here. Mental health is such a big need, and so is addiction. And we have a wonderful team of people at Gateway who are very excited to get on this project. But as a continuum of care, which we're hoping to form in this, we're going to work as one, even without the official title. We do kind of make a checklist of things that we expect certain organizations that are helping the homeless or providing services for the homeless to meet. However, an organization is allowed to have their own policies and structures and procedures in place that I cannot change. There are a few things that we can change. Patrick brought up a really great point about the fact that our housing authority does not have a prioritization basis, and that's something that they have practiced because it was an easier way than picking one of the prioritization basically tools. And now that the entire federal government is looking at how we prioritize people, now is a really great time to have this conversation, not just about shelter, but about housing, but about transitional housing, sobriety, mental health. It's a great time to have this discussion of how we can streamline things. That way you can get the same services at every place, and it's the same kind of process. I love this idea. I'm all about it. Plus, it makes everybody's life easier if we're all working on the same forms. Right? Yeah. Do you have anything to add to that, though?
No, I've worked with Lauren closely about the information that we would require or need to meet our own internal policies. And understand, while the Salvation Army is the Salvation Army of Shawnee, a lot of our policies are national policies. We do have some territorial policies which come out of Atlanta, and then I have some divisional policies that come out of Oklahoma City. So I can't change policies locally without getting a lot of permission. There are things that I have the ability to make decisions on, and when I'm presented with something that I can make a decision on, I have no problem doing that. If it's something that requires me to challenge my own policies, I have no problem doing that either. And so as long as I can build a good rationale, I can tell you this, that when I've challenged policies in the past, as long as the rationale was solid, there was no concern from the Salvation Army. So as long as it makes sense, we're a pretty pragmatic organization. So if it makes sense and doing it the way we're doing it is creating a barrier, then we're going to look at adjusting that. And that's really what actually happened through this continuum of care that we have in Norman. The Salvation Army in Norman used to have a 14-day policy, or a 14-day policy. You could only stay in their shelter 14 days, and then you had to hit the street. As a part of their continuum that they have there, that got changed to 30 days because the other providers and agencies in the area said, you know what? If you can give us 30 days, then that gives us enough time to get these folks plugged in and information and hopefully work a case plan. And so our facility, I know I'm a long way from the question there, but our facility is an emergency shelter, but it's a 7-day renewable shelter. So you have 7 days, no questions asked. If you want to stay beyond 7 days, you have to commit to case management. As long as you're meeting your case management goals, which are goals that the client sets themselves, then your stay will be extended for an additional 7 days. And then you meet weekly with the case manager, and extensions are granted on a 7-day basis. Policies can be changed. If it's standing in the way of serving someone and serving them to the best of our ability, then it's something that we need to look at.
Well, to me, one of the best things about the program that we've gotten ourselves into is that we do the whole thing is collect good information, have quality by name. I mean, it's in its name. So gather good information, and then get our providers together in the same room and discuss person by person. And these are not public meetings, and you can obviously see why they're not. I mean, these are very, very sensitive information, but they're going to be able to see these folks, what their situation is, and then you're going to have people like the captain here go, hey, send them my way and I can help with this, and someone else can say, send them my way, I can help with this. The whole goal is to get these folks on their feet, get them housed, and not have the homeless. I mean, the whole idea is when she did this census that she did for us, is we're going to look at, what was our number here, and then she's going to be doing again, what's our number here? Is it going down? Is it going up? We look at the whys. Why are you homeless? And if we see a trend in the why, then we know that's a problem that we've got to address. Okay, so we're collecting good information, and then we're allowing people that know how to deal with situations like this, good information, so they can make good decisions and offer, the right kind of help. So, we make this situation smaller and smaller. Obviously our goal is to get to zero. I don't think that's humanly possible, but we're going to try to get as close to that as we possibly can. So, but the whole idea of this is to have, if I've got 30 organizations working together, there's a lot more strength in that, and 30 of them working individually.
Absolutely.
So this is our opportunity to work together.
And in regard to the coordinated effort, I arrived 2 years ago, June 2 years ago. We were here 6 months or 9 months, and then everybody shut their doors as a result of COVID. So there are a lot of service providers that I really haven't even had the opportunity to meet. My social services director started February the 12th. The city shut down March the 15th.
Yeah, welcome to town.
Hasn't had an opportunity to meet or network with individuals, and those networking opportunities that used to be built in aren't happening. Didn't happen as a result of COVID, and they haven't picked back up. And so it's going to be tremendously beneficial for us and the people that we serve to have everybody who could play any role in the room together.
Yeah, I've got an easy one. So this one was sent specifically to me. Will you please explain the difference between homeless and street people? So, I think this is particularly true in downtown. There's lots of folks that if you're down there every day, you see lots of the same folks out on the street. Just because you see them out on the street doesn't mean that they're homeless. In fact, a lot of them have a home, but it's just around the downtown area. They're not able to hold a job for one reason or another. They don't have a car, whatever. So that was pointed out to me very clearly about, I don't know, a month ago. We had a meeting, Lauren and I did, over at the Housing Authority, and I went into the wrong building, okay? So I went into a building that, rather than being an office building, it turned out to be one of their apartment buildings. So when I go inside there, I'm seeing all these people. It's like, man, I've seen that one, that one, that one, that one out on the street. And I mean, most people go, oh, there's a homeless person. Well, guess what? No, they live, right over here a few blocks away. So some of the folks that we see, and I'm looking at my friend Lisa over here that runs the library and deals with these folks a lot. There's been lots of those folks that when I ask her about them, she goes, oh, well, he's got a home. It's just over here. But, during the day, they hang out on the street or they hang out in the library or but we see them and we all make the assumption that they're homeless. So there is a difference. I mean, and you can't, I just hate that we just lump everything into that one word. There are so many different reasons a person can be homeless. But
So that was made very clear to us when we were doing the survey, and our leading question when we were doing the survey was, where'd you sleep last night? I got quite a few people very angrily who said, home.
Yeah. I mean, so you can't
Did I just
assume.
profile you? Yes,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Travis, you've got a couple
I got a
questions
couple.
over there.
So the first one says, what kind of transition time did the tiny houses operate on? And most of them are a year basis with the ability to apply for longer. The ones down in Austin area, I believe that those, much like what Captain was saying, if they are operating and they're intentionally in good standing and working towards a goal of creating a better them, getting the help that they need, then they get to stay longer. So it's not a most of these programs are intended to be a tool to help them create a better world for themselves and a safe place to land while they're figuring that out. So it's not just hey, cool, I get a little tiny house to live in and I don't have work to put in to keep it. Most of these programs are intentional about having steps and plans to move those individuals forward. The second one, it says, in the past there were rumors of vans transporting and dropping off people here in Shawnee. Is this true or not from larger cities?
I've never seen that.
I can't confirm or deny that. I've never seen that. I've heard that as well. I know that there are. I know that I've actually paid for a van to come and get somebody and take him to the city. Myself. Because he needed a bus ticket and there wasn't a way to get him there, so there was an Uber guy came down and got So it just I've shipped somebody else myself, So, but I've never seen anybody shipped in. So, and it was, and he like I said, he had the money at the bus station that somebody had sent him. He just wasn't able to get from here to the city.
And I know, Lauren talked about this Monday night commission meeting was if we, and she has found folks that are like, if I could get to my family in Dallas or my family in San Antonio or wherever they are, and we can confirm that they actually have somebody down there that's going to accept them, because we don't want to be guilty either of like shipping our problems somewhere else. But if we've got someone that says, hey, I got family down here and I'd really like to get there, I mean, it's a pretty cheap solution for us to come up with money for a bus ticket if we know there's going to be somebody waiting on the other end, and then Lauren's going to be tracking, did they get on the bus? Did they get, did somebody actually receive them at the other end? We're not opposed to that, but we're not just going to load people up in a unmarked van and, haul them out of town in the middle of the night. To my knowledge, that does not happen here. I've not seen it. If somebody's got pictures of that, I would love to see it, especially if it has a tag number, because I would have our police run it, and then I, as mayor of Shawnee, would be calling the mayor of that community and having a very pointed discussion with them about that. But, if you've got that information, I'd love to see it, but I don't really think that's happening. When we went to Norman, it was funny enough, they were telling us that everybody there is telling them they're coming from Shawnee.
Yeah, I was just about to say that, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of, movement. But as Lauren, discovered when she talked to them, most of them are from right here. And Dan, when he came and talked to us in Oklahoma City, he said consistently, and he's done this a long time, 75% of the folks in his shelters in Oklahoma City are from Oklahoma City. 20% are from Oklahoma, but a different city outside Oklahoma City. And you can see how that could happen, because if you live in a small community and you need maybe, mental health, help or whatever, you're not going to stay in, a podunk town. You're going to go someplace where you think you can get services. So you're probably going to head for like Oklahoma City or Tulsa. There's probably folks in small communities around us that go, hey, Shawnee's the bigger town. I can go there, and there's, that's just going to happen. But only 5% of his folks, he said, this was consistent year in, year out. We're from out of state. So generally, it's a local issue. Generally, it really is. And that's something we're always going to be asking. She did this one census for us. That's not the last one. We're going to be doing this over and over and over. And I know she can't wait to crawl into more abandoned buildings. But I mean, this is something we have to track. Are we going up? Are we going down? Where are they coming from? Why are they in the situation they're in? And then connecting them with the folks that we have here in town that can hopefully make a difference and get them off the street, because that's ultimately what we all want.
We had only 12 that said that they were from outside of Oklahoma prior to becoming homeless, and somehow during their homeless duration ended up in Shawnee. A lot of the times they were picked up walking a corridor, or they were trespassing, or they were trying to get somewhere, put in a county jail, decided that Oklahoma County was pretty rough, and just started walking down I-40. That's how a lot of people get here. I hear that story time in and time out. And I've driven I-40 a few times. That does not look like a really fun walk, but you will now see it, and I'm telling you this because it's imprinted in my brain now. Now that you're going out to Midwest City, you'll see footpaths on the side of the little dampened pieces of land all the way down where people walk. And I don't know. That's something that resonates with me quite a bit now that we can see it. You can literally see footprints. I just wanted to reiterate, we have 3 questions up here that are left remaining, correct?
It's Salvation Army specific. It says, and if I get the handwriting correct, it says, can Salvation Army get more facilities to accommodate true need? The easy answer to that is yes. The follow-up questions are going to be, how is it going to be funded and where is it going to be located? For the first time, the Salvation Army in Shawnee, for the first time in a decade, closed in the black last year.
Good job.
Okay? So we don't have it to go out and build it. And so the next question would be is if we had it, where would we build it? Most folks don't want it in their neighborhood. A lot of folks don't like it in downtown. But we're kind of grandfathered in downtown. We've been on that block for 90 years, in 2 buildings in 90 years. So, sure, I'd be glad to build a new facility. That one's 4 years old and it's been worn rough. But yeah, the only barrier to that is going to be money and location.
I'm going to address 2 questions in one. What needs to happen to start the discussion about transitional housing? I think you've heard it here, folks. It is money and the place. We have this lovely website that I've mentioned a few times. If you go homeshawnee.org/volunteer, you can also sign up to be on a committee. Just a committee, none of this stuff. You don't have to crawl in abandoned buildings with me. Just a committee where we talk about locations. If you want to come in abandoned buildings, gladly accept your help there too. And the second question is, now that you've collected data, could you outline the plans for the next 6 months to a year? Yes. Every month we are going to have at least 1 meeting, probably 2. They're going to be called the case management meetings, where we look at persons, like Mayor Bolt said, on a by name basis and try to connect that person to housing and services as fast as humanly possible. We're going to try and identify all the barriers that are in between a person that is experiencing homelessness to housing and try to get to where we're really good at navigating those or eliminating those as fast as humanly possible. In addition to those meetings, we're going to be doing continued outreach where we go out into camps. I'm going to try and go out every week to make sure that we have an instilled trust and communication between the persons that are out in the camps. That way, when we do have housing available, we're not trying to track down old Tiny Tim, and we have no idea where he's at. We know exactly where he's at. We know where he gets lunch. We know where he sleeps at night. We can find him pretty fast. Additionally, doing a continued outreach makes sure that we're checking in for public safety. We're making sure that somebody isn't out there in the middle of a crisis. We're making sure that people are respecting some of the boundaries that we have set in our society that they just might not have remembered that day. And additionally, we're trying to identify what specific needs happen from day to day. Do we need to expand something on Tuesday that might not be needed on Thursday? Believe it or not, it does happen. Also identifying the days of the month where services are most utilized. That way we can make sure we have added volunteers on those days based on when you get your Social Security payments or your food stamps or whatever services that some people might have. Some of the service points have far less interaction with our homeless friends and neighbors. Wouldn't you agree with that? So being able to identify those things is going to be instrumental in making sure that we can be successful. And like I said, during this 6 months, we are going through every piece of the internet and trying to find any possible grant that we can apply for this community. That way we can secure funding. All of our committees are going to be meeting at least once a month to make sure that we can get this rolling. This is not just another initiative where we sit in a room and we talk about how nice it would be to get something done. This is the initiative where we're getting something done, or we're deciding as a city and as a municipality that we're not going to do anything ever, and this is just the status quo. And let me tell you, friends, this room full of people tells me that that's not going to happen here. So, again, thank you guys very, very much. Like I said, there's a question here. It says, what can we, the public, do at this point in the process we are discussing to help? I know we can volunteer, but is there anything else? Join a committee, raise some money. There's a fundraising committee. If you've got money, put it where your mouth is. Come and help us pick up trash. Come with me to get in abandoned buildings. I know that it's volunteering and we all roll our eyes, but at the end of the day, this is a nitty-gritty kind of job, and we need hands-on.
Right. No, and I would reiterate that. I've set 2 seats that direction and said to the people of Shawnee, hey, we need to do our best to love these people, these individuals, these moms and dads, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, sons and daughters, and then I have conversations with property owners who go, my goodness, those folks you're talking about, they trashed my place, or they're using the restroom in the bushes behind my house, all these things. And I thought to myself, I can't sit in that seat over there and say, love these individuals if I'm not willing to put my efforts and my time into that. And so Tuesday, after the commission meeting, I spent 3 hours picking up trash, filled up a whole dumpster, picking up trash in the downtown area. Not to brag, but to say, if I'm going to be intentional about saying, please give these individuals a chance and please love on them, I've got to be willing to go the extra mile to make that possible. And because I wouldn't want that happening in my business or my backyard. I would get pretty frustrated with it too, and it's very understandable. So.
Can I say something about continuum?
Absolutely.
So you've heard the word continuum used a lot, and I think we should probably explain what a continuum is. For anybody who doesn't know, that's a collective group that are going to address a problem. And so federal dollars through HUD are passed through continuums.
Right.
The continuum we're a part of is 19 counties. So our number of homeless individuals is getting lumped with 19 other counties and comes up with a composite number of homeless individuals through which HUD then allocates dollars to. Now, because our numbers are a part of that, any provider, municipality that wants that grant money has to compete with all 19 counties and services within those 19 counties in order to get funded. So that's why it would be important for Shawnee to look at creating its own continuum,
Right.
because then we get to keep our own numbers and get our own allocation. And so we could get a bigger chunk of federal dollars to help address a problem that is here in our community. Now, what does that mean? That means that there's going to be a program out in Guyman that isn't going to get money because they don't have Shawnee's numbers to boost the pot of money that's available to them.
Yeah,
Okay.
so to kind of piggyback on what you said, 19 counties, but I want to talk about where that goes from. East of Seminole to the New Mexico state line in the Panhandle.
Yeah.
How do you wrap your hands around that? You don't, and you don't do it very effectively. So what we are going to be trying to do is form our own continuum of care here for Shawnee. Ultimately, that's what I want, is Shawnee, okay? So we are starting that process. We're dealing with the federal government to do that with HUD. That'll give you a little idea just how hard that's going to be. But I have called HUD. I have talked to them a number of times. First of all, they were very surprised. They said they had never been called by a mayor before. The other thing is we've never had anybody ask, usually people aren't asking to form their own because it's a lot of work, but that's the way we're going to have to do it to get things done here, And I know, maybe we're competing for money with somebody else and all that. I don't care.
Right.
You guys elected me to serve Shawnee. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So if that means compete for somebody's money, I'm going to compete for somebody's money. I'm not going to apologize for that.
And just so you know, In that continuum, I don't know the total allocation, but I know the 3 counties, Lincoln, Seminole, and Pot County were awarded $50,000 to address homelessness.
Yeah.
And that's split by 2 agencies.
Doesn't go very far.
It doesn't go very far at all. So forming our own continuum would give us the opportunity to access more federal dollars to support the initiatives and programs, transitional housing, tiny homes, you name it, could be funded through that. So.
Yeah. Okay, let's go over the rules of the rest of the night, guys. Going to be a stickler here. So anyone can come to the podium. We're going to do this in an orderly fashion. We have very little sign-in sheets. I'm going to ask that if you do want to speak, that you sign in. Here's what we're going to do, though, to try and make things a little bit easier on our city clerk here. Let's have a lineup at the podium if you're going to speak. Let's only take up 3 minutes. The panel will address your question right there. So let's try and utilize our time the best we can. I'm going to hold up 2 fingers when you're at 2 minutes, 1 finger, none. So please respect that boundary. You can come up again, but let's allow everyone in the room to have their chance. Again, we really want to hear your ideas. We want to hear your concerns, and we want to make sure that if you have a very specific issue, that gets addressed tonight, or at least it gets down in the books to be researched and addressed this week. Okay, friends? Yeah. Yeah. I just don't think that. Okay, let's start with the people who took the time to sign in this evening. Robert Keel, could you come up here, please, if you would still like to speak? Okay, and I think we have Chris Gedler? I'm the worst. I'm the absolute worst.
No, you're good. I just signed it. You're good. But you can go to the next person.
Good, next person. Okay.
Michael Savage, Mr. Savage.
Hey.
How y'all doing today? Beautiful evening. Thank y'all. And once again, I'd like to say that is what you're doing is truly a big task, and you have to have a big heart to even just to, go about it. So some of the ideas I had, I was thinking, majority of the money in the fund is it the building or the how would you say the keep the utilities, to keep the utilities running? And if it's the utilities, have you been looking into solar power? Have you been looking into, I know in Las Vegas, I haven't been, but I know they got that water system that it fixes that when the water goes in, it repurifies itself and it comes back up. Because I know that the cost of water could be, burden on the city. And also, and another thing, I know you noticed you talked about mental health. I know a whole lot of people that would love to go into that field, but they don't know if they're going to get paid or if there's training for some of that. Like some of us, we're here because we understand it's the mental health and we understand it's the funding. But if there was a way we can obtain that training to be able to help you as individuals, I think those things are kind of help the program.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, great. Majority of funds would be spent on staff and operations. That's just the bear of the beast every time. It's just the worst. But yes, OG&E has breaks for nonprofits and sometimes organizations like this. You just have to make sure that you're following all your P's and Q's and getting all of those application sheets turned in every month. Because it's a monthly basis. Water department, we know some folks. So that's something that we could definitely work out. Mental health, unless somebody else has some information here, we do have some certifications that anyone can go and get. We do training for people who want to come out and do outreach with me. A lot of the times what happens is somebody just needs to talk, and anybody can just have a conversation. The key is to just be a neighbor, just somebody who can help is anybody who's got the time and the patience for it. So trauma-informed certifications are hard to get in because everybody wants it, because we all identify that it's a need. But it is something that we're hoping to get brought here into our community and get all of our volunteers trained in one heap. That is something that we're working on. I think we're going to have that in September. Anybody else?
Veronica?
How are you?
Good evening.
Thank you for coming.
I apologize ahead of time. I'm not
That's
good at
okay.
public speaking.
That's okay. We're an easy bunch. We're a friendly bunch, so you just
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm going to kind of take this 3 minutes and just kind of wing it, so
Okay.
you can kind of bear with me here.
Ma'am, could you pull the mic down just a little bit?
Yeah.
'Cause I can't hear very well. Thank you.
Okay.
work.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Verizon. Okay, my name is Veronica, and I am a full-time volunteer with Nana's Answered Prayers here in Shawnee. Our goal here at Nana's Answers Prayers is to install hope and kindness back into the world by changing one family at a time. Some of the things with Nana's Answered Prayers that we provide for the community, we do weekly clothing giveaways from Facebook group, emergency food to individuals and families that need them, a couple days worth, birthday bags for children 12 and under whose parents can't afford it, household items to fire and domestic violence victims such as myself, back to school backpack program the first week in August, our annual Christmas toy shop, which I am so blessed to be a part of. Their first year, they serviced 100 children. Last year, we serviced 379 children for Christmas. Our goal this year is to do 500 children. I don't want to stop with just children. I want to do families. We have been in the streets with the homeless on multiple occasions. And there's more of this I can read, but I have to give you guys a personal validation to Nana's Answered Prayers, okay? Christmas was my opening to this nonprofit organization. Upon entering, I was very shy, angry, very scared due to years of domestic violence myself, due to years of being encircled by my family's drug addiction. Not mine, but my family's. My husband passed away 4 years ago due to a massive heart attack. When he died, I lost myself even more. And I'm now fighting with my 24-year-old son in his addiction to meth. I am currently 1 foot to homelessness and 1 foot being blessed by my family and friends in this group that I volunteer with. I, with their help, was able to pack up my belongings today and put it in storage to get myself out of a violent situation, thanks to Nana's Answered Prayers. I have clothing on my back because of Nana's Answered Prayers. I had a VPO order, which I am still struggling with, that was paid for out of pocket money through Nana's Answered Prayers for me to not be a part of Group B, for me to rise above. And I am on disability. I don't have a job. My job is for him above. My job is for Nana's Answered Prayers. My job is for this community. I promise you, I volunteer 40 plus hours a week for this community. And I would love for your help with making it possible. And I can tell you this, an answer to a lot of your questions, if you just listen to the community. They want to help. They want to donate their time. They want to donate their money I'm one of the community donating. Please listen to us.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Thank you very
Veronica.
much. Thank you for all you do.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, thank you for finding the courage to stand up and share that story with us. And I have so many individuals like yourself that want and so desire to create a better world for them and their families. But unfortunately, the access to the resources, the barriers that so many times come up, that robs a lot of individuals like yourselves hope. And when you don't have hope, the effort that is needed to overcome is very hard to find too. And so thank you for finding your hope. Thank you for inspiring us and giving us an opportunity to believe in somebody like yourself. And
Made it this far without this.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Kelly and Steve. You good? Good. Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Okay. That's all. That's
that it?
If we want to, if anybody else would like to speak, just feel free to come to the podium as long as you introduce yourself. Does anybody else have any more words? We'll catch you at the end. Come on up.
Come on
Yeah,
up and
yeah.
talk with us.
Hi, my name is Joe. I'm with Disciples of Lamb Ministries, and we go out into the community every weekend and take people to church. And so we meet a lot of the homeless and love on them and pray with them, and so. But one of my concerns and questions is that. So what we do with a lot of the homeless and people who are intoxicated on the streets is we call the police, and they go and pick them up, and then they go to the emergency room and all of those things. And actually, it's one of the pastors that I totally adore who brought this up to me a while back, and I have studied and actually looked into, where we're spending several $1,000s on every single call. Every single call that costs the city of Shawnee, those emergency rooms, those police rides, all of that, the booking, everything, the in and out. So what we could do as a collective is get together and take those resources and place them in a place that's specifically for a holding place for sobriety. And then those extra money, because there will be a lot of extra money with that being taken care of at a fraction of the cost. We can take that extra resources that are being allocated into wrong places and put them into a place where we can actually have some facilities for these homes and homes for these families that are transitions. We can have several different facilities, not just one. Some for men with children, some for men alone, and women who have been abused and battered. All of those things we have the resources for. It's just that we're not allocating them appropriately. And we need to take back all of those things, re-look at the numbers, pay attention to what's going on in our community, and then thenceforth construct a better plan and do it. So that's my idea, and my name is Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Nice to meet you, Joe.
And, and that's something people don't realize is the cost of doing nothing is very high, because every time we have, an interaction with a police officer or they go to the emergency room, I mean, we are paying for that. So if this is a situation that we can, get fewer homeless on our streets, then we're going to have fewer of those interactions. We're going to have few trips.
It is an
fewer.
absolute. We could definitely do it. We also have the support of the Seminole Nation. We have the support of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation. We have so many resources that definitely want to back us up. We just need to make sure that we have the right plan and then go into action. That's all it is. It's just very simple.
Well, that's what we're trying to do, is put together a very organized, data-driven plan
It's good. I'm excited to see this come into
make
action.
this better.
So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you for coming to talk to us.
Do we have any other speakers for this evening? Yes.
There you go.
Hi, my name is Rhonda Hockenberry, and I work for a public school district that is not Shawnee. But when you mentioned the McKinney-Vento, that is a federally sponsored program, and I just wondered how or if Shawnee is using those funds to assist what you are discussing.
Yeah,
If there's a liaison for the district that is working with you
Yes.
to get the
Yes,
best
absolutely
out of
there
those
is.
dollars.
They use it.
Good,
They
good, okay.
have an itemized how they use it. A lot of that is like backpack programs, and a lot of that is most of the elementary schools now have like a little cove in the entrance where kids can discreetly come in and
Good.
change their clothes if they need to. Some of them can grab a little snack before they go to breakfast. They can sit down with a counselor if they need to. They're hoping to expand that to every school. They're very focused on this. We're trying to figure out how we can safely cross communicate about specific children, but of course that's really hard to do because you are talking about minors. We know that if we have parents' consent, we can always hop in there, but there are quite a few high school aged kids that are completely out on their own.
Yeah.
And how we navigate those kind of weird idiosyncrasies between federal government and state.
And the ESSER 2 money that is out for school districts that's very lenient on how that money can be used in school districts.
Yep.
And so, providing extra meals and those types of things for kids. So just wanted to make sure that, those dollars are there. I want to make sure that they're going where they
Right.
need to go. So
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's a really great point. Working with the school system is something that has been actually one of my favorite parts about this job, because who would have known that we have this, it's both heartwarming to see so many teachers really getting educated on what it is like to be that most extreme form of poverty, and seeing the teachers work together with counselors and other staff, support staff getting on board, bus drivers, everybody is communicating with each other, and it's kind of unique watching this organization navigate this and then trying to look at our own organization and kind of model it after these amazing people who do amazing work. They're not just teachers anymore, they're social workers too.
Yeah.
Travis,
But-
you have
No, it typically and there are some that are very open as far as the restrictions, but typically a federal dollar comes with about 15 pages worth of how to spend that dollar, and then there's another 15 pages of how big in trouble you're going to be if you don't spend it the right way. And so that and then often too, depending on the buzzword or the project of the week, is on sometimes how those dollars can be spent too. And I think being intentional in the time that Lauren and I have been communicating about her position and have, I guess it's time to go. We've been working.
last call.
Yeah, we've been working together. There have been several grants and several different things that we could see where we're going. Oh my goodness, we as a community are leaving dollars
On the table.
lots and lots of dollars on the table, and she is going after them with all of her might, and it is very impressive to see. We may not get them. That's how grants work. That's but if we don't apply, I guarantee you we won't get them. And so,
And I would add that most federal grants, particularly housing grants, are reimbursement grants.
yeah.
So you have to have the capital and spend it first before you can get reimbursed. The problem is that sometimes you spend it and you think you're doing the right thing, only for them to not approve what you've done, leaving you with a hole. I've dealt with HUD in several of the communities that I've been a recipient of program funds, and I've had to write a check back to the federal government for $50,000 because we read the regulation to say one thing and they said it meant another. So you have to have it, number one, to do anything in order to get a reimbursement, but then the reimbursements aren't always guaranteed. It depends on the individual who's reviewing it and their interpretation, and then any challenge you would have to it. So just because you get the grant doesn't mean that you have the money. It means you have a revenue, or an opportunity for a reimbursement.
Right. And the only thing I want to add is that, we've been involved with the schools early on, and they were very, very happy to participate in this. So, in fact, you know, you can say that for any group that we've met with. I mean, everybody's been very enthusiastic about this and sees it as a good opportunity for everybody to work together and make a difference here. So that's been a very, very good thing to see.
Yeah, the only thing I have to add is that we have been utilizing our community grant writer, Sarah Dame. I've worked her to death. Somebody needs to send her a fruit basket.
She deserves it, for sure.
But yeah, guys, I think that it's about time for us to head out for the night. If you want to grab an agenda, if you don't have one, my email's on the top of that. You have a question, sir? Hop on up.
How are you?
Good. My name's Ken Curbo. I pastor Cross Connection Church, or C3, here in Shawnee.
Yeah.
I'm also the chaplain for the Shawnee Police Department. One question is, have you reached out to churches at all with this? The reason I ask is, I only found out because I saw a post on Facebook that you were here at the commission meeting Monday night.
Okay.
And I know there are a couple of churches here that are represented, but make sure that you do reach out to them. Two of the ladies that came up actually have been that have talked, are actually part of my church. So it's kind of cool to see them up here. But I mean, like, different churches have different things to offer. Sure. I mean, like, we are actually 2 blocks north of Boy Scout Park.
Oh wow. Yeah.
We have a lot of homeless folks that walk through to charge their phones. We have a 75 by 125 foot gymnasium that's used on Wednesday nights, and that's about it during the week.
Right.
It has 2 showers, it has bathrooms, it has a kitchen. So there are opportunities. It has Wi-Fi. We have 2 vans that are used on Sunday mornings and occasionally on Wednesday nights. And about once a year, Travis and them borrow them when they're taking big groups. So there are other options, you know, that we can offer. We also offer, on Wednesday night, we actually have a women's support group that is for women who are high risk. Women who have been abused, women who, you know, either sexually or domestic violence. There are 15 to 20 women that are in a house called the Refuge House that we own here in town as well. So we have, I'm sure it's not just my church, but there are other churches that have things to offer. I just want to make sure that we're reaching that way. And I noticed you mentioned something about, I think it was Joe that mentioned something about the folks who, public in talks. That's actually a conversation I don't know if you've had the opportunity, Mayor, or not, to go and look at that building that they have in Oklahoma City for their public in talks.
Not yet, I haven't.
It's something you really ought to go. I've actually talked to our chief about it, and again, we've talked to a couple of the tribes about pulling some dollars together.
Right.
An opportunity to bring them in and keep them for 24 to 36 hours.
Right.
At that place, and that allows them time to dry out. They give them a hot meal. They are able to give them some literature, try to have some mental health people there. It's cheaper than the city paying for people to go to the county jail.
Absolutely. Yep.
Because that's a big, I mean, you
people,
know what it looks like.
People don't
at the
realize
budget.
that costs us money.
And it's really, you know, if you get the right building, the right situation, it's not that expensive to run something like that. So that's something else for you to consider as well.
Yeah.
We should
All right, so you might reach out to the churches, but make sure you, I mean, he knows how to get hold of me. He knows how to get hold of me. Reach out to me, and, you know, again, I have a coalition of pastors within the community, being the chaplain, that I can also work with.
That is 1,000% the intent behind the Built for Zero movement, is to take everybody's gifts and talents and put them all on the table, and then use those to intentionally, because as each and every one of the individuals, they don't just come with one issue. They come with multiple issues, and not every nonprofit, not every service, not every individual is equipped to handle all of those. But if we are intentional about sharing our resources, intentional about having those amazing conversations, and I knew all those things, and, you know, because I've had conversations with you, and, you know, and I've been part of whenever Gateway did sober sports in your gym, and we're very intentional about working with you know, addiction and with mental health issues and all the things, and so yes, 1,000% yes.
And we run recovery programs.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah,
And, you know, I'm really glad, Ken, that you came up and talked with us, because this has been the reaction as people learn about this. They go, well, hey, wait a minute, I can help with this.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the kind of reaction we've gotten from folks around town, and they all see the value in
Absolutely.
pulling together. So
Absolutely.
we
Leverage
really
is the name of the
appreciate that.
game. Leverage is the name of the game. It's the name of the game in life. It's the name of the game in addressing this issue in our community, is leveraging what everyone brings to the table. No one organization can accomplish anything.
Nope.
We can attack one portion, but it's leveraging the resources that are in our community and prioritizing those to those who are the highest at risk.
Yes,
It's good.
Yep, absolutely.
I am a community certified chaplain too for any kind of
There you go.
things that go around. I'm the only one actually in this part of the state.
Thank you, sir. That's a remarkable job. I think I'm going to open this up to comments from the panel, and then we're going to be out of here, guys.
Yeah.
We got made a clean break.
You.
I want to thank you all for coming tonight and participating. When I first moved to town 2 years ago, there was a stigma regarding homelessness, and that we only had people who were homeless in town because the Salvation Army was in town. Hate to break it to you, I only serve about 30 of them a night. So I'm not the reason that they're here. But it is exciting for me to see a city recognize that there's a problem and begin to put things in place to address the problem, so that we can have a healthier, safer community for all of us. And so I'm thankful you're here. I'm thankful that you're willing to participate, whether it's in public comment or public discussion or even boots on the ground. So I'm thankful for you tonight.
Same thing. I'm thankful that you guys are all here. I'm excited that we're going to get together and talk about case-by-case basis and see how we can help people and truly help them.
Well, you know, there's a lot of thank yous I want to pass out. I want to thank all of you for coming. First of all, you know, there's probably a lot more fun things you could have done tonight, but I appreciate you taking your time to come. I also appreciate just the way this whole meeting was conducted, and I had no doubt that it would be this way. It was intended to be, you know, a gathering of our just neighbors to get out and talk and have a civil conversation about a situation that none of us are happy about. We want to see, you know, a better, you know, move it in a better direction than it's been. We want to make that number smaller. I want to thank everybody that took time to come and serve on this panel tonight. And the other thing I want to do, I don't want to forget, is in the back of the room, there are 2 city employees that gave up their evening to open this up and allow us to come in here. And I know both of them had better things to do tonight, or more fun things to do tonight. So I want to thank both of them for coming and letting us in and taking good care of us. So, and I hope we didn't break the lights. So anyway, thank you guys so much for having interest to come down and talk with us. I know there'll be lots of other questions that come up, and we're very open to answering those to the best of our ability. We are not always going to have the answer. If this was easy, we wouldn't be here, right?
Yeah.
So thank you, and thank you, Lauren, for all that you've done.
Yeah. I just would, you know, it's really easy to get it's really easy to get caught up in the difference between having empathy and sympathy for somebody and then not feeling like you can be upset and disagree with something that's going on. It's really hard to see when things that you care about are not taken care of. It's really hard to see when somebody else destroys your property or does something to make the world that you care about not be as good as it was 10 minutes ago. but it's what we do with those frustrations and it's what we do with that anger. If we use it to be intentional about saying, okay, this is really bad and I don't like it and I don't want to stand for this anymore. If we are intentional about shifting that frustration, shifting that energy and passion towards walking through the steps, doing the things that we need to do to, much like the amazing young lady said, we got to step back and look at ourselves and say, what am I doing? Where could I do better? Where could we as a city could we do better? Where can I do better? I can't just sit here and say, we're going to take care of this. And whenever I say we, I'm, not doing this, So, thank you for being here. Like I said, I was not planning on sitting up here. I was planning on sitting in the corner and just listening because I really believed that like we said, sometimes our job is just to listen to each other, and it was amazing that the amazing individuals that found their voice and were able to speak to us and ask us the questions. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Again, email address, you all have it. I respond as long as I'm, not in the crisis or in, breaking into buildings and stuff. So, again, everybody wants to come out. It's like an 80s movie, we could just have some good old times. I want to thank Nancy Barrett for being here and helping moderate. I called her literally this afternoon and asked her to do this, and she miraculously said yes, against probably her better judgment. So, thank you guys. Thank you to the panel. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, guys.